California introduces itself in pastel, a wildflower meadow turning gold and violet in April, a backyard hedge clipped into neat dark green cones by the front steps, a cluster of bright red berries pulled from the hillside behind the house and woven into a Christmas wreath, freeway medians lined with flowering shrubs that soften the concrete on every commute, a quiet mountain meadow in July, damp underfoot, dotted with tall flower spikes swaying above the ferns. None of it looks dangerous. All of it looks like the postcard version of the state. That is exactly the design. Today we are counting down 11 of California's most dangerous plants, ranked from quietly troublesome to outright lethal, and nearly every one of them is hiding inside something the state has decided is beautiful. In California, the plants that actually hurt people rarely look dangerous. They look like landscaping. They look like wildflowers. They look like dinner. If you spend real time outside in this state, hiking the foothills, tending a garden bed, foraging along a creek, or just clearing brush off a fence line, this list was built with you in mind. If that sounds like you, consider subscribing, because this channel is built around exactly this kind of plant, the ones hiding in plain sight across every corner of the state. Let's get into the list. Number 11 is Toyon. In late autumn, it lights up the hillsides above Los Angeles with clusters of small, waxy, bright red berries packed tight against dark, serrated evergreen leaves. The same shrub cut for holiday wreaths and porch decorations across Southern California for generations. According to a popular but historically disputed legend, its holly-like red berries covering the hills above the city are the reason the neighborhood of Hollywood got its name in the first place, though historians generally trace the name instead to an Illinois estate that an early landowner simply thought sounded pleasant. What almost nobody clipping a sprig for the mantle realizes is that the unripe berries, along with the young leaves, contain cyanogenic glycosides, compounds that convert into cyanide once broken down in digestion. Documented veterinary cases describe goats and even donkeys poisoned after eating yard clippings left within reach in a pasture. The toxins concentrate in new growth and immature fruit, then fade as the berries fully ripen, which is part of why generations of Californians have picked and handled Toyon without incident and simply assumed it was harmless holiday scenery. It is native, it is beloved, it is sometimes called Christmas berry or California holly, and it may have given a global entertainment capital its name. In parts of the state, it is even a protected native plant, illegal to strip from public hillsides for exactly the decorating purpose that made it famous. Everyone in Los Angeles has heard the Hollywood legend. Almost no one realizes the plant behind it is quietly cyanogenic. Number 10 is Foxglove. Tall spikes of bell-shaped purple flowers rise above a rosette of soft, woolly green leaves, a fixture in cottage gardens up and down the coast and into the Sierra foothills, where the plant has fully naturalized after generations of cultivation. It is also the original source of digoxin, the heart medication, which tells you everything about what the plant is capable of before symptoms even start. Every part of Foxglove, the roots, the leaves, the flowers, even the water in a vase holding cut stems, contains cardiac glycosides that can throw the heart into a dangerous rhythm. Poison control records describe a couple who made dinner using leaves picked from their own garden, believing they were harvesting borage, a similarly shaped, unrelated herb. Both ended up hospitalized with elevated digoxin levels and dangerously slowed heart rates, treated in a cardiac unit until the toxin cleared their systems. Symptoms from foxglove poisoning do not always announce themselves quickly either. Nausea, weakness, and visual disturbances can build gradually enough that the plant is rarely the first suspect. The danger here is not a plant lurking in the wild. It is a plant most people bought on purpose from a nursery, planted in a bed a few feet from the kitchen, and never thought to treat as anything other than decoration. It has been sitting in the flower bed the whole time, mistaken for something ordinary in the herb garden right next to it. Number 9 is the California Buckeye. In May, its branches fill with hundreds of creamy white flower spikes, sometimes over 1 million blossoms along a single stretch of highway through the Sierra foothills, drawing native bees, butterflies, and hummingbirds in a bloom locals plan hikes and drives around every spring. It is one of the most quintessentially Californian trees there is, native to these hills long before anyone else arrived, and its seeds were once processed and eaten by California Indian communities after careful leaching to remove the toxins. Here is the twist. That same nectar and pollen is toxic, specifically to the European honeybee, a species that did not exist in California until colonists brought it over centuries ago. Entomologists at UC Davis have documented what beekeepers call buck-eyed bees, larvae that hatch with deformed wings and crippled legs after a hive forages too close to a blooming buckeye, sometimes weakening or collapsing the colony entirely. Native pollinators, which evolved alongside the tree, show no such reaction. Some local beekeepers now physically relocate their hives out of the foothills every spring just to avoid it, trucking colonies down into the Central Valley until the bloom passes. The seeds themselves contain a glycoside chemically similar to compounds used in some rodent poisons, which is why the tree is also considered undesirable on grazing land. The tree is not doing anything wrong. It has simply never had to adapt to a species that only arrived a few centuries ago. Somewhere in the foothills, right now, it is still quietly poisoning a hive that never saw it coming. Number 8 is sacred Datura. Along dry washes and disturbed roadsides across Southern California, it unfurls large, white, trumpet-shaped flowers by evening, several inches across, rising from a low spread of velvety, silver-green leaves that look almost soft enough to touch. Native to Southern California and the broader Southwest, it is also known as toloache, and for centuries it held a genuine ceremonial role among California Indian peoples, including the chumash and tongva, consumed in carefully measured ritual doses as part of a coming-of-age tradition. That history has not made the plant any safer. Every part of it, the leaves, the roots, and the spiky seed pods that follow the flowers, contains the same tropane alkaloids, atropine, and scopolamine found in its close relative jimsonweed, and published case reports describe deaths among teenagers who sought the plant out deliberately, hoping for a hallucinogenic high. The danger is serious enough that many California parks now actively remove it from public land. Even its old ceremonial use is no longer protected in practice. Using it in a religious context with a minor present is treated under California law as child abuse, despite the plant's protected status under the American Indian Religious Freedom Act. Toxicologists sometimes describe it as a wolf in sheep's clothing, an apt description for a plant whose soft, silvery leaves and generous white blossoms hide something every bit as dangerous as the thorny pod waiting underneath them once the flowers are gone. Number 7 is Larkspur. Tall spikes of blue, purple, or occasionally white flowers rise out of foothill grasslands and mountain meadows every spring, the kind of wildflower display that ends up on postcards and hiking blogs. Ranchers across the western United States see it differently. Larkspur is one of the most economically damaging poisonous plants on cattle rangeland, responsible for losses researchers estimate can run into the millions of dollars across a region in a bad year. The alkaloids concentrated in the plant cause neuromuscular paralysis, and as little as 5 to 7.5 pounds, eaten within about an hour, is enough to kill a full-grown, roughly 1,200-pound cow. Symptoms move fast: staggering, muscle tremors, bloating, and eventually respiratory failure. Heifers, research shows, are about 3 times more likely to be poisoned at a given dose than bulls or steers, which forces ranchers to manage grazing differently depending on which animals are in a pasture. Low larkspur tends to bloom earliest in the season on foothill rangeland, while a taller variety takes over at higher elevations later in summer, meaning the danger window simply moves up the mountain as the year goes on, rather than ever really closing. The plant is most dangerous exactly when it is at its most photogenic, in full bloom, which is also when it is most palatable to cattle looking for something new to eat after a lean, dry spring. It has been standing in the pasture the entire season, waiting for the wrong animal to find it at the wrong time. That is the halfway point, and the pattern should already be clear. In California, the plants that actually hurt something rarely look the part. They look like wreaths, gardens, wildflowers, and rangeland scenery. If you are enjoying this, consider subscribing, because the back half of this list gets harder to believe. Number 6 is Death Camas. Its bulb looks and grows almost exactly like a wild onion, buried in the same kind of meadow soil, surrounded by the same grass-like leaves, which is precisely the problem. Foragers looking for wild onion, or the edible camas, Lily have mistaken it more than once, and the consequences are well documented. In a case published just last year, 7 members of a single family were hospitalized after foraging bulbs they believed were wild onion, all 7 developing nausea, vomiting, dangerously low blood pressure, and a slowed heart rate within roughly 30 to 90 minutes of eating them. The toxin responsible, a steroidal alkaloid called zygosine, primarily targets the cardiovascular system, and in livestock it is a leading cause of sudden death on rangelands, where it often grows alongside larkspur in the same early spring window, in the same overgrazed pastures. It is also frequently confused with the mariposa lily and the edible Camas lily, 2 other bulb plants that share the same meadows and bloom in roughly the same window. The only reliable way to tell it apart from true wild onion is smell. Real wild onion smells distinctly of onion. Death Camas does not smell like anything at all. Everyone thinks they would recognize an onion bulb on sight. Almost nobody thinks to actually smell it first. Number 5 is milkweed. Its broad leaves and clusters of pink or orange flowers are the reason monarch butterflies still exist in any real numbers, since monarch caterpillars can eat nothing else. And California conservation groups actively encourage homeowners to plant native species like Asclepias areocarpa, California milkweed, specifically to help the species survive. It is, on paper, one of the most beloved plants a California gardener can grow. It is also, chemically, closely related to the freeway oleander hedges growing a few counties over. Milkweed's milky sap contains cardiac glycosides, the same broad family of heart-disrupting toxins found in oleander and foxglove, concentrated most heavily in the sap itself. Then, the stems, leaves, and roots. Research on California milkweed specifically has tracked how those toxin levels shift by season and by plant part. Information that exists largely because monarch caterpillars have evolved to eat the plant safely and store its toxins in their own bodies as a defense against predators. A caterpillar can handle it, severing a leaf vein first to slow the flow of sap before it feeds, a small piece of insect engineering built entirely around surviving this plant's chemistry. A grazing animal, a curious pet, or a person cannot. And poison control centers continue to log cases of serious cardiac symptoms after accidental ingestion. The plant everyone is now told to grow on purpose to save a butterfly is carrying the exact same class of poison as the shrub lining the freeway. Number 4 is Belladonna, deadly nightshade. Its genus name comes from Atropos, the figure in Greek mythology who cuts the thread of a life, a name chosen deliberately for a plant this dangerous. It has naturalized in scattered patches of California, typically in disturbed ground, along old fence lines, quarries, and forgotten corners of overgrown property. According to botanical surveys that track it alongside similar naturalized populations in Oregon and Washington, the plant itself is unremarkable, dull green leaves and small, drooping purplish flowers, right up until it fruits. Then it produces glass-black, cherry-sized berries that taste genuinely sweet, which is exactly what makes it so dangerous to children who find it growing wild. As few as 2 to 5 berries can be fatal to a child. The toxins responsible, tropane alkaloids including atropine and scopolamine, block a key neurotransmitter throughout the nervous system, producing dilated pupils, a racing heart, confusion, and in severe cases coma. Historical accounts describe it being used deliberately as a poison for centuries, including an account of an army being killed after being given wine laced with belladonna berries during a supposed truce. Case reports describe the danger persisting even indirectly, poisoning traced back to meat from livestock that had grazed on the plant beforehand. It rarely announces itself the way something called deadly nightshade should. Most of what grows wild in California, looking vaguely edible, gets a passing glance. This one earns a second look every time. Number 3 is yew. Clipped into dense dark green hedges and formal topiary shapes, it is one of the most common ornamental plantings in California gardens, prized specifically because it tolerates heavy pruning and holds a tight shape year-round, and historically nicknamed the death tree long before it became a landscaping staple. Every part of the plant except the fleshy red aril surrounding the seed contains taxine alkaloids, compounds that act directly and rapidly on the heart. Veterinary case reports describe horses collapsing within 15 minutes of eating yew clippings tossed over a fence, a timeline that reflects just how fast the toxin moves once absorbed. In humans, a lethal dose has been estimated at roughly 50 grams of fresh leaf material, and documented poisoning cases describe a progression from nausea and abdominal pain to a racing heart, then a dangerously slowed heart, then cardiac arrest, sometimes within hours of ingestion. In one of the stranger twists on this list, a related compound drawn from yew bark became the basis for paclitaxel, a widely used chemotherapy drug, meaning the same genus that can stop a heart in hours has also helped treat cancer in millions of patients. What makes yew unusual on this list is how deliberately ordinary it looks. Nobody hikes past a manicured hedge and thinks about toxicology. It sits by the front walk, gets trimmed on a schedule, and is treated as landscaping maintenance rather than a plant capable of stopping a heart, faster than almost anything else growing in the state. Number 2 is poison hemlock. Tall, hollow stems marked with distinctive purple blotches rise up along roadsides, ditch banks, and disturbed fields across the state, topped with the same delicate, white, umbrella-shaped flower clusters found on wild carrot and Queen Anne's lace. Plants poison hemlock is routinely mistaken for. This is the plant historically credited with killing the Greek philosopher Socrates, and it has had a very active few years in California specifically. Following the heavy rains that hit Northern California in the first half of 2023, botanists and land managers documented a marked surge in poison hemlock coverage, with the California Invasive Plant Council tracking its spread across a growing list of counties. Every part of the plant contains conaine, a neurotoxic alkaloid structurally related to nicotine, and ingestion produces trembling, dilated pupils, a slowing heartbeat, and eventually paralysis of the respiratory system, with symptoms typically appearing within 30 minutes to a few hours. A forensic toxicology case from California described a woman found deceased in an isolated area, with poison hemlock ingestion confirmed at autopsy, one of a small number of documented poisoning deaths tied specifically to the plant. It smells faintly mousy when crushed, which is often the only clue distinguishing it from its harmless lookalikes. And even that is easy to miss outdoors, mixed in with real wildflowers. It has been creeping down the ditch banks and disturbed fields since the rains came, spreading a little further into view every season. Number 1 is Western monkshood. Nothing else on this list looks quite like it in bloom. Tall, spindly stems climbing through moist mountain meadows across California, ending in folded, hooded flowers of deep blue or purple that genuinely resemble the cowl of a monk's robe, which is exactly where the name comes from. It thrives in the kind of damp, high-elevation clearings that draw hikers every summer, often growing in loose, scattered stands among ferns and wildflowers, easy to photograph and easy to walk right past without a second thought. The genus Aconitum has carried the nickname Queen of Poisons for centuries, and it has earned every part of that title. The toxin responsible, aconitine, concentrates most heavily in the turnip-shaped root, though it runs through the entire plant, and the dose required to kill an adult human has been estimated at around 5 milligrams, roughly the weight of a single heavy sesame seed. Symptoms move with almost no delay. A tingling, burning sensation spreads through the fingers and toes within minutes of ingestion, followed by numbness, vomiting, and a racing or dangerously irregular heartbeat. And in severe cases, the heart stops before emergency responders can intervene. A documented case describes a 25-year-old man in good health who took an afternoon walk with friends and ate some wildflowers along with wild blackberries. The flowers later identified as aconitum. By 5 o'clock that evening, he had nausea and abdominal pain, then vomited. He collapsed around 6:15, and resuscitation attempts were unsuccessful. Blood testing afterward confirmed aconitine as the cause of death. Older accounts describe an even stranger use for the plant. Horse traders reportedly fed small amounts to horses before a sale, because the toxin's effect on the nervous system made the animals appear unusually spirited and energetic to a prospective buyer. What makes it the fitting final entry on this list is not just the speed of the toxin, it is the disguise. Every plant before this one hid inside something familiar: a wreath, a hedge, a wildflower meadow, a rangeland weed. Western monkshood does not hide behind an ordinary appearance at all. It hides behind an extraordinary one, a flower striking enough that hikers crouch down to get a closer look, completely unaware they are looking at one of the fastest-acting toxins that grows anywhere in the state. Go back to that wildflower meadow from the beginning, the one turning gold and violet every April. Nothing about it has changed. The wreath on the door at Christmas is still cut from the same hillside. The hedge by the front steps is still clipped into the same neat green cones. The freeway median still blooms right on schedule every spring. What has changed is how you see it. California's most beautiful plants and its most dangerous ones are very often not two separate categories. They are frequently the exact same plant, viewed from a different distance. That is not really a reason to be afraid of a state that happens to be covered in flowering, fruiting, endlessly photogenic plant life. It is a reason to actually look closely at the things you have always walked past without a second glance, the way a naturalist does rather than the way a tourist does. The berries are still worth picking for the wreath. The garden bed is still worth planting. The trail through the meadow is still worth walking. Most Californians will spend a lifetime around Toyon berries, foxglove borders, Buckeye blossoms, and roadside umbels of white flowers without ever once being harmed by any of it, because knowing what something actually is turns out to be most of the protection anyone really needs. The wildflower meadow is still beautiful. It was always beautiful. It was just never quite as innocent as it looked from the road, and now, walking through it, you will finally know exactly which flower deserves the second glance.